Hey, coaches, welcome to Championship Culture. Got a fantastic guest, an old buddy of mine, Jamie Bolton, who is the head football coach at Cannon School, which is a private school in the, what is it? Would you say Charlotte area?
Charlotte Concord, yep.
Concord area.
Concord.
And Jamie came on and did the stick video for us a while ago. One of the most popular videos we got on the channel. And Jamie's doing me a favor. We were supposed to do this tonight, but we got storms rolling through, so we're doing this earlier in the afternoon. So his daughter Cooper might make a cameo on here at any time. He's got her occupied right now, but he doesn't have any help at home. So be prepared for that. And man, I'm excited to hear from you because I got a couple theories about the younger guys and culture, and I want to find out if it's true. So first, thanks for being here, buddy.
Thanks for having me. I'm always excited to talk to you, Coach, and a lot of the culture stuff that I've learned. I was fortunate enough to be with you, and when you were the coordinator at Red Springs with George Coltharp, and culture was a big deal that changed and started that turnaround in 2010, where we won one game in 2000, but the year before you got there, and I think it was 10 that we went. I think we went 12-3 that year, and a lot of it was culture and a lot of it was scheme, but it was definitely a better experience for everybody. So that's kind of where I started with it. And I've always tried to stay a part of, always updating our culture and trying to learn as much as I can about the behavior on our team as well as the skills. So I'm excited to talk about it.
And you also had the experience. You were in a big dog program in South Carolina that went to the state championship. So you have that perspective also.
Yeah, absolutely. So Bobby Carroll hired me after I left the previous school in Charlotte or at Marvin Ridge, and I was there a year. And then Bobby came in, and he had an established culture since he got there, and a culture of winning and discipline, and all the coaches were in alignment. And I think that was the biggest thing with that was, and I'm going to talk about that today as a part of the definition of culture. But alignment is key. And when I got there, it was like, man, if you don't get on the train, it's going to be leaving the station. So that's something that I've tried to, my first year, finishing up my first year as the head coach of trying to build that alignment. But Bobby Carroll, I've been, part of his staff. I've been a part of, your staffs, and it's definitely been a blessing.
You are the first one. The alignment idea, I think, is so huge when you're building a program and building culture, and you're the first one that's ever mentioned it. So I'm already excited to hear your thoughts on it because I just think that is the easiest way to screw up a culture and screw up a program is to have coaches that are not aligned. So you're already here. I can't wait. So here we go. Question number one: can you give a 1-minute elevator introduction of yourself?
Yep. So I'm Jamie Bolton. I just finished my first year as a head coach. I've been an assistant coach for 9 years, a couple in college, so maybe 11. I've kind of bounced around a good bit. Got my first job without any head coaching experience. I was actually the coordinator at York for 1 year in 2018. Dean Boyd took the job in 19. I went to receivers, did everything I could for him. Learned a lot from him culture wise too. I can't leave him out. Applied for a couple jobs, and without knowing anybody in Concord or Charlotte area, they gave me an opportunity, and it was based on what I could do culture wise, because that was the biggest thing that was needed at this place. Cannon School and Concord Academy basically had to merge teams 2 years ago, the year before I got to the school. So I took over both programs. Basically, we are the Cabarrus Warriors, so it's kind of a weird thing, but the numbers were down, culture was not where it needed to be, and so they wanted to hire someone full-time teacher, full-time coach, and try to establish a culture. And we ended up we were 2-8 the year before I got there. Then when I got there, we were 5-3, won the conference. We beat 5 teams that had beat us by I think an average of 35 points, and started 6 freshmen. So we kind of had a fresh start. All the coaches left except for one. And so we definitely got a fresh start, and the things are trending in the right direction. Our numbers are looking good. And so it's an exciting time to be a part of this. So that's kind of where I'm at with my career.
I want to go ahead and I'm going to hit you with the 2 off script questions just because I know you. So the first one is I want to ask about age and culture. I have this theory that culture just comes easier to the younger coaches than it would be for a guy like my age, where we were, and I know you got coached by your dad growing up and he was a tough cat, but you know, when I was growing up, you know, someone grabbing your face mask and getting in you was common. Do you think that younger guys have an advantage, have a better feel for building culture now?
I think us younger guys have an advantage of learning from the older guys in a lot of sense. The word culture, I don't think was used back in the 90s. I think it was we have a football program, and I think the distinction was, do we have a team or do we have a football program? And I think the same behavior skills were taught then, maybe in a little bit tougher way. But I believe that now that we have so much access to information because of the internet and because of all the books, I mean, man, you can turn, you can go anywhere and find out stuff about culture. But the one thing that will give anybody the edge is something I'm going to talk about is leadership. Culture, you know, leadership is the number one component of that. And so I think everywhere you look, either the young guys or old guys, if they're good leaders, their culture's going to be good as well. And I think that's the biggest takeaway that I've seen in my young career. I'm 33. And been coaching 11 years. But I don't think there's that much of a difference from, say, a guy like you that's always been focused on it, and a guy like Bobby Carroll and a guy like Dean Boyd. I've seen similar trends even with me, and I think those, all of you guys have kind of taught me how to, run a program and try to do it the right way. So I'm not sure if there's a distinction in necessarily a program, but I do believe there's a distinction in the language that's used and the abundance of information for guys that maybe didn't coach for you or coach for Dean or coach for Bobby. Now we can read books and learn on the internet and things like that. Podcasts, obviously, like your podcast, that's a big resource too.
You're a reader and a grower. I remember, I would read something, I would be all fired up about it, and virtually no one else would get excited about it but you. You were the only one that would latch on and get excited about those kind of leadership and culture components. And I don't know why. I have good friends that they would think I was nuts, but you would you would go all in on it. I remember
Well,
the
you
good
got
to
me,
great
man. I tell you, this is a interesting deal. You got me on good to great. I remember, and man, I went all in. I went down the rabbit hole on all that, and I think the other one was Built to Last, talking about the 10xer companies, and so when I got the coordinator position for Bobby Carroll at York in 2018, when he coaches, like, you're the head coach of the offense. So I have my staff all the way from varsity to, through the middle school. And the first thing we did, he came in and we had our first, coaching staff meeting, and it's just the offense. And he comes in and we're not talking about scheme. We're talking about core values and the hedgehog concept and what we're going to be doing for, what we can be best at, what do we love to do, and then how we earn our money. And so when we did that, we talked about the flywheel and how our common language as an offense, would perpetuate this will to grow and grow and grow. And we had the big, hairy, audacious goals. And I mean, I went all in on it. And that's something that I also, when I interviewed, I said, this is what we did. As a staff, we came up with core values. And you go back to John Gordon and talking about getting the right people on the bus. And even in Good to Great, he talks about getting the right people on the bus and then figuring out where the bus is going to go. So those things I've always tried to stay on top of, and like that always intrigued me just as much as scheme. And I think that's probably the number one factor, not necessarily in winning, but I think probably in getting the most out of your team.
That's awesome. Here's the other big one I had, and this is unique to you, and no one, they can't tell by watching this, but Jamie is one of the funniest people on the planet, like professional stand-up comedian funny, but you get intense as crap on game day. So my question is, do you allow your players to see that sense of humor during the week? I mean, do they know that you have that sense of humor?
Yeah, and it's, as a position coach, I don't think I allowed it a lot, because I'm really focused on developing their skills and then, talking to them, and the interaction time I think was for, I guess a couple reasons kind of less when I was at York, especially for like 6 years. But now that I'm a head coach, there's times where I can have a conversation with a kid, or, I could kind of be in the back and like crack a joke or something like that and have the kid laugh. But I still have that intensity. So there's a, and I think it was you that taught me there's a fine line between, being, and I was young. I was 22 years old when I was coaching for you, and you talked about there's a fine line between being a player's best friend and almost being like an older brother or mentor. And so I've always tried to take that. Now that I'm older, there's more separation, but yeah, they see that in me a little bit. I could still do the impressions of the other coaches and all that. So it's pretty good. So I'll maybe sneak an impression in here or there.
I just thought it would be, if you could figure out how to use it, it could be just I mean, you are just so friggin' funny that it could be a huge advantage. I'm serious. It could be a gigantic advantage of because I think a program that's fun to be a part of is a gigantic advantage, and probably something. I mean, I know you told me a story one time about your dad, and you took a strike three. Do you remember telling me that story? And I mean,
I
I've
think
never
so,
been
yeah.
a baseball guy, and it made the hair on the back of my neck stand up, about what true intensity is. And you have that. You're extremely intense, but you also have that sense of humor that is like a 1%er, a sense of humor. I just thought that if you can make your program fun to be a part of, what a gigantic advantage that can be. And I just wondered if you found the magic to melt the two, the
And
intensity
it's
and the sense
and
of
it's hard, and I'm sure all of us coaches, whether you're a position coach, a coordinator, a head coach, it's always hard to focus on building that relationship with the kid. And because I get so locked into, like, I'm also very like type A, that we did our, I'm just very kind of, I got to hit all the box, you check all the boxes. And sometimes I get a little bit lost in that still as a head coach of like, hey man, take a step back, find opportunities to have a lighthearted conversation with the kids. So it's tough. I just finished my first year doing it. You think about the pressure, which at this place there's not a ton of pressure to win, but there is pressure at every program, and but you still got to find that time and place to kind of make it fun. And our coaching staff does a good job of it too, and they kind of feed off of that. So if I can crack a joke, then they feel like they can crack a joke, and the kids feel like they can crack a joke, and then we can still get things done. So yeah, I like that. I like that about our culture. And I didn't even think about that until you said it. I'm like, yeah, I do. But like for other programs that I've been with, you really didn't have room to do that. And for better or worse, but I want our players, I want our coaches to feel like they belong, because I believe that everybody matters and everybody's personality matters. And if you have an outgoing personality, be outgoing, be yourself. And I think if I can do that, then I feel like the other kids can, and the coaches can feel that way too.
I just thought you have a skill for it, but we started this year. I hate to even admit this. We started corny joke of the day. So we'd start off every day with a corny joke, and that literally lasted about a week and a half. The Thursday before the first game, I got up there and I was supposed to tell the joke, and I said, I don't feel like telling jokes. I want to whoop someone's tail. And we haven't told another joke since. So
That's
it's
awesome.
hard. It's hard to melt it, but dang, I just
Right.
think it could. When it's fun to be in the program, it's a gigantic advantage. Well, kids love being a part of it. All right, so let's get to it now. So, question number 2: what is your definition of culture in your program?
Yeah, so for me, I pull from a lot of guys that are, do this for a living and have all this stuff. So Tim Kite's a big one for me, Brian Kite, those guys, reading a lot of their stuff. But I believe that culture is the environment that leaders create, which drives behavior, which ultimately produces results. And I feel like that is what I try to do every single day. And the number one variable in culture is leadership. Um, uh, when as leaders we have influence, and it's not because, and this goes back, you can read John Maxwell. I mean, there's another guy, and all these the things that you read, and I guess what's so intriguing is from Brian Kite to all the football, John Gordon to John Maxwell to the guy that what was his name that did good to great. I'll think of in a second, but everything they talk about, they have similar overlapping
Peters,
qualities when
Tom
it
Peters,
comes to what now?
Tom Peters, is that good to great?
No, it's I'll think of in a second, but it seems to overlap when they talk about leadership, level 5 leadership. That's a big thing. And what's the difference in level 5 and level 4? And so leadership is the number one um, factor or variable in culture, and it's not based on your title. If you allow your title to be a leader, then you're going to be ultimately an ineffective leader. So leadership is based on earned trust. And if culture, and this is a quote from Tim Kite, if culture doesn't happen in you, it won't happen through you. So you actually have to be the epitome of what you want your culture to be, and it's tough. There's a lot of responsibility with that. I've really felt the weight of that this year, and coming in and promoting myself, and the 8-hour interview that we had in our school. They wanted someone bad enough to have a Zoom, an hour-long Zoom interview, and then to have us on campus for a full day, and we met everybody on campus. It was like, I'm sure that's how they do it in college, and it's like you talk to everybody. And so when you sell yourself like that, and you talk about it, then you better be sure if they offer you the job that you can follow through on that. And so far I feel like I have. And you know and I'm happy with that. There's a lot of pressure, like people are looking at you for that. So you definitely have to make sure that the culture is happening, in me, so that I can perpetuate outside of my 20 square feet, which is another Tim Kite thing. And I also believe this about culture in terms of its definition: is culture is built by what you practice, promote, and permit. So whatever you do, your behaviors that you practice, whatever you promote, and then it's also what you permit. So if you let things go, that is your culture. You can talk it all you want, or you can have it on a T-shirt, or you can have it on whatever. But if you're letting it go or you're letting it slide, then you are promoting it. And
That's
so I
what
believe
it
in
is.
that.
That last one is tough for me because it gets me into bitching and complaining mode, because I can't. I mean, I'll see it and I'll have to have an internal dialogue with am I going to let that go and talk about that on Monday, or am I going to jump on it right now? And you have to jump on it right now. And it just, to me, that gets me sidetracked sometimes, because you can literally let nothing slide, or else you're promoting it. And
Yeah.
so I know there's a skill there that I got to get better at.
Well, and it's coming up with, what do we want to permit, or do we want 1,000 rules about, what do we want to permit, and then how do we do that with each individual kid? Like, I can remember this, and it's a silly thing. I'm not going to say who the coach was, but the best player, he was my player, and I was coaching receivers, a stud kid, just one of those guys. He knew he was the best. He could get away with things that other kids couldn't. And I remember one day, he he wore the wrong socks out to the game, and I said, "Hey, man, not my thing. Don't really care, but I'm going to enforce it because that's what the head coach wants me to do. You got to go back in there and change your socks, or you can't play." And well, he goes right up to the head coach, and he comes back and says, "Coach says I'm good." so, so I'm thinking, all right, look, I'll do whatever. I'll enforce whatever rule. But those are things. I mean, after, and I understand what the head coach was thinking too. So I'm not throwing him under the bus. I'm saying, like, it's a sock. Like, if it, and look, I don't have a lot of rules for things when it comes to that. You can wear our team colors is where I kind of keep it. We're not gonna wear some off colors, but I don't like to enforce things to a T, because I don't have the wherewithal to keep up with. I'm not even gonna see a sock game day. I'm not looking at socks on game day, so I don't want my coaches to have to worry about that. But those are, I think, things like, what do we want to permit? Now, if it's talking back to a coach, I'm gonna pop that guy immediately, and I'll handle it. And it may be harsh for one kid, and not harsh for another, but it's going to be the same punishment overall. And so, hopefully, my culture, or any culture, the kids will not let it slide. And so we actually saw that this year. We have a kid on our team that we probably had one or two, what you would call outside the not all in. You have like the I think Urban Meyer calls it the bottom 10%. Like, you're always going to have that bottom 10% that's not all in, or not even in the middle circle. And one of those kids mouthed off to me, and before I could even say anything, we had one of our big offensive linemen that just jumped down his throat. And so when you see that stuff, your culture's permeating in there, and then you have leadership in the locker room, and you kind of have that culture, that locker room led team. And I'm hoping that's what continues to happen. And that's not going to happen at every program, but this, for us, we have some really good kids that really believe in that. And so, but yeah, that's a tough one. Permitting stuff is tough because you feel like if you don't, um, I feel like if you permit it, it's like, well, how much are we going to let go here?
I think the I always say when your best players, if they think they're special, whoo, you got issues.
Yeah.
But if your best players are your hardest workers and your best leaders, you got a chance to win a championship.
Yeah.
And how many times, and we've seen it, how many times have you got that where your best players think they're special and they can get away with certain things, and I just don't think you can win the biggest games when you have that kind of when you
There
have
and
that kind
another
of
story, and I guess whoever was a part of that will know what I'm talking about. But it's it's hard when, and I'm not gonna throw anybody on the bus or anything like that, because I think there's a lot of factors that play into that. And if and when I took this job, I knew that that wasn't going to be an issue, because I knew that the athletic department, the Cannon School, Concord Academy, we are all going to be in alignment on culture and behavior over wins and losses. And I think that helps a culture. Now, if it's reversed and you're hired to win ball games, right? We've all been there. When you're hired to win ball games, culture doesn't matter to those people, and culture won't matter to the parents, and culture doesn't matter to the kids. And so if you hold a kid accountable, well, you may have an issue. He may quit, or he may transfer, he may do some things. So I think taking the right job I think is the biggest skill in that. Like if you are a culture guy and you believe and that's what it's going to take to win long term, then I think that's a part of it. And I've been to places where winning was extremely important, and so you need your best players to play. And I'm sure coaches, obviously that's a dilemma that you have to go through every single day at some programs.
But you nailed it. It's about picking the right job and getting that figured out during the interview process. You got to interview them. You got to interview
Yeah.
them as hard as they interview you. So I think that's part of the magic is getting in alignment there.
If I could just continue on with the definition. So the first part's leadership, the second part is alignment. And so culture takes alignment, and it's up to the leader to provide that focused energy that we need to be going in this direction. And that's constantly something that I feel like I'm always trying to, portray the narrative to the athletic department, the AD, the strength coach, the players, the parents. We need to know where we're going. That way they know, how to behave, what to expect. And then if they understand what where they need to be in that alignment, I think it's easier for everybody. But I try to be really intentional about that. If I have a conversation with a parent, um, I'm always trying to tell them this is why we are trying to do this. I guess it's so what some people call their why is what helps people get into alignment. And so I think that's the biggest one. Another piece of culture is performance, and I think we've kind of touched on that. Like, what is how does culture affect performance? Um, and I believe I'm a big believer that behavior leads to performance. They're connected. I don't think that you can go out there and perform your best every day if you have a dysfunctional environment. I just don't think you can. I feel like if you don't have a culture that everybody matters, then you're not going to have performance from top to bottom. And it's a football, and in football that's especially important. We need our scout team players to go out there and perform well every single day for our first team to get a good look. Not only for the betterment of our skills and our scheme and things like that, but to make sure that everybody matters is something that I feel like everybody should benefit from the program, not just the stars, not just the superstars. So I think performance is key. What type of behaviors do we want to improve? It's thinking and making decisions is one. How do we? That's what we want to get better at. How do we think and make decisions on the field, off the field? How do we stay away from 15-yard penalties? Those are the big ones. How do we, influence others positively? The second thing is communicating and collaborating. So how do we intentionally go about making sure that our kids are communicating, our coaches are communicating with each other? We don't have any fallouts on the sideline. All that kind of goes back to alignment. And then thirdly, managing your emotions. We see it all the time. How do we effectively manage our emotions as coaches? How do I manage my emotions on the sideline? It starts with me. If I'm out there and I'm blowing up and throwing my hat like I used to back as a young coach, well, I got 15-year-old kids watching me do that. And so when they slam their helmet on the sideline, well, I can't, what am I going to say? Hey, don't do that. So you have to be really cognizant of that. And it goes back to leadership, that one ties back into leadership and managing your emotions. And then that way, if you can manage your emotions, then they know they can too. And so that's a big part of it. And the last thing, and this is something else from Tim Kite, behavior is the one thing that affects everything. And if you think about jobs, you think about this. So behavior is the one thing that affects everything. And if you think about jobs, you usually get hired for your skills, your technical skills. But the number one thing you get fired for is your behavior. That's the number one reason people get fired is because they don't know how to collaborate. They don't know how to think and make decisions. They don't know how to manage their emotions. And I think in your culture, you have to teach those things intentionally. And the last thing, culture in terms of a definition has to do with accountability and influence. You have to know and own your 20 square feet. You are in direct control of your thoughts and actions. And if you don't believe that, then you're gonna you're you're always gonna have an excuse. And so we don't let that happen. We talk about accountability. We talk about the influence that we have. Accountability means I can control my 20 square feet. I can control my position. I can control the 20 square feet in my office or in the classroom. Um, and then we also know that my behaviors and actions don't just affect me, but they affect people beyond my 20 square feet. And so talking about bigger picture and down the line with that too. So those are some big things that we talk about. And that's why this year, I guess that's going into the next piece, but we teach the R factor from Brian Kite, and that's what was talked about in the book Above the Line by Urban Meyer and Tim Kite. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're actually in the middle of doing that in the off season right now, of teaching our guys how to do all these things intentionally.
All right, so great. So that's what I was going to ask you. So how are you teaching that? You're doing it once a week. What are you doing to teach that?
So the first thing, and I'll just go into the three best things that build culture, and that's maybe the number one thing. So just as a brief synopsis of what I did when we first got here. So I got hired in March. That was right before the lockdown. So I remember having the interview on campus. They were meeting that day to shut school down for the rest of the semester, and so I get hired, and the very first thing I do is call all the players, try to get them on the roster because they're leaving left and right, and uh, and then we finally got a roster together, and then I put them into position groups in the off season, and we met once a week with that position group to teach the 7 C's from John Gordon and I think it was Mike Smith. They wrote that book called the 7 C's of culture, or 7 C's. Winning in the locker room first is what it was called. And so what I did when I was at York is I developed that for our offense, and it was you take each C and I had like a little curriculum that we would go through, like a worksheet, and it was something pretty cool that the kids could break out in Zoom meetings and things like that. So that's what we did, and that was going through our language, building that common language of what does culture mean. So defining what culture is, and it actually not only defines it, but it asks the kids, what culture do you want? It gives them um, some freedom to talk about that. They wouldn't, and they're opening up. Hey, I didn't like how we did this last year. We were, back and forth last year. Two schools kind of combining. We didn't feel like there was a lot of camaraderie. So that was a part of it. Then we go into the next, and that was week one. Week two was contagious. Why are my actions and behaviors contagious? Week three was consistent. What does it mean to be consistent? Week four was communication. What does it mean to effectively communicate? Week five was connection. How do we connect with one another? Week six is commitment. So define commitment, what that looks like. We talked about our rubric that we use. That's kind of on that commitment continuum. And then we talk about care and what it means to be, a member of a family, or caring for, your brother. And so that's what we did immediately. And then that kind of set the stage for what we're doing this off season, which is teaching the behavior skills that we were talking about with with, thinking and making decisions, communication, collaboration, and managing your emotions, and how we actually can go about doing that. And I believe in the equation E plus R equals O, and that's another Tim Kite thing. So that's um, the event plus the response will equal the outcome, and so he calls it the R factor. So in that equation, the only thing that we can control is the response that we have to any given event, and we can control every bit of that. That goes back to our 20 square feet, and it's a 6-step process that and Urban Meyer talks about it a lot in Above the Line. He goes into a lot of examples of how these kids did this through each step. And press pause is R1, R2 is get your mind right, R3 is step up, R4 is adjust and adapt, R5 is make a difference, and then build skills R6. And so we are in week. We skipped this week because we're on spring break, but we'll get back, and we're going to get into step up, and that's really taking action. So we went through press pause. What does that mean to not make a rash decision? Tim Kites talks about default versus discipline response. Don't go into a default response. How about take a breath, look, what's going on, the context, big picture, and then make a disciplined, skillful response to influence the outcome. And no matter what the event is, somebody's, and the big one that we see all the time is kid talking trash on the field or kid playing dirty on the field. And, our kid just immediately wants to go punt or push back or whatever. Well, if we can press pause and get my mind right, and then we can take the right action. And that's going back to the huddle. And that's a great response. The outcome is that kid probably got the 15-yard penalty, and now we're in a lot better shape. So those are the things that we are intentionally building. And so what I did to do that is I took the R there you go online. That's Tim Kite R Factor series training. I think it's like $100, and I took the training, and then I'm actually training the kids the way that Tim Kite trained me weekly. And so we're doing the worksheets. They break out. The whole team meets on Zoom, and then we do breakout sessions. And they fill out the questionnaire that comes with it. It's pretty easy. But so far, that's another series of language that I can use in real time. Like if a kid makes a bad response, I can say, look, man, you didn't press pause there. You're acting in a totally default, rash way. If you'd have pressed pause, you'd have had time to get your mind right, and then you could have made the right action. And so I feel like that's going to be huge for us this year. And that's that. And I haven't talked about scheme at all this offseason. I didn't talk about scheme until June last offseason. And so, and we had some pretty good numbers. So I just feel like this is way more important.
Give me nuts and bolts. What night are you doing this? Well, how long is it taking?
So for our schedule, we have built in like an hour and a half, 2-hour deal in the middle of our day, um, because of this COVID schedule that we're at. So, and not everybody's on campus. And so we can't meet in a big room anyway. So I just have everybody Zoom in at 11:45 every Monday. And so every Monday we meet, we watch the video, or I think we watched the video once, and I just started going through it because I think it was a little more effective. But have the PowerPoint, shared on the screen, and then they have the questions already emailed to them. And so when they break out for the Zoom, they actually answer the questions, and they break out and they talk about it, and they come back in and we debrief. And so, and when they do with those questions, they send me the questions through an email. That way I have a record of who was there, and the things that they may be going through. I think one of the biggest ones, what keeps you from getting your mind right? What gets you out of the right mindset? And so I can have some insight on that as well. It's hard to do it in Zoom, but I think at times it's easier too. Like if we were on a big room, it'd be harder, I think. So Zoom is easy. And so that's what the kids are used to now.
Love it, man. I hate it when someone's getting after it harder than me, but I love it. I love the ideas.
The third thing with that though, and so this is kind of the next piece. So once we get done with this R factor training, I'm going to take those same R factor skills, and then we're going to throughout the season have either a guest speaker or some coach talk about an example of each one. So like, and we may have to go through that hopefully twice if we make it to the playoffs, but just keep going through that stuff and hitting it every Thursday. And the third thing that we're doing, so now what we've done, so we've gone through the 7Cs year 1. And so this is now year 2, and we're going through the R Factor series. So the 7Cs will now be our sub-varsity Warrior Builder 101 class. And so our middle school coach will take our, 7, 8, 7, 8, and 9th graders or whoever's in there, and they go through the 7Cs now, and they develop that language. And then when they get to us, they'll go through R Factor training. And then if they're elite, our elite guys are unit leaders. And this is another thing from above the line, and what Urban Meyer was talking about is the 9-unit strong. And so the 9-unit strong, he has a leader for each position group. And then so we're gonna and I choose that. I've already chosen those guys, and we're actually going to start that in late April. And that's a 10-week course that we're using Jeff Jansen's team captain's leadership manual. And so each kid, I'm just going to go ahead and buy the book for the kid. They're going to have the book, and we're going to go through a chapter a week. And then they are going to be part of the captain's council. And so I'll meet with them every Wednesday starting in the summer. And then what they do is they will actually grade out their position group based on their behavior. And it's a rubric that we use.
Give me the book again, leader. Jeff Jansen,
team captain's leadership manual.
Is that Cooper?
Yeah, sorry.
We were waiting for
She
it.
just want to know what's going on. But yeah, so those are the 3 things that we're doing this off season, and I'm excited about that as much as the new plays we're putting in. So
no, that's
here's a bonus one. I got a bonus one for you.
All right.
So the bonus one I was talking about grading the players. So there's I guess a rubric that grades out from 5 to 0. And I think a lot of people have had. I got it from Mark Hoover at York, and he's the strength coach. And Sean Powell, our strength coach, actually uses it at Cannon. And when I interviewed, I used it at York with Dean Boyd when we were grading our guys out in the weight room about how they came in every day. And so that's the rubric that our unit leaders will use every day on a Google sheet, and they will have to go in every night and they'll grade out their teammates. And then when we meet on Wednesday, we can talk about, hey man, this is a great opportunity to lead. This kid's at a 2-3. He's a 2-3 kid. We need him to be a 4-5 kid. And so just understanding that rubric and that model, it's awesome. So 5 means you're compelled. That means that you're doing 100% everything you can, plus pulling people with you. A 4 is I'm 100% all in, committed. A 3 is compliant. Okay, I'm kind of showing up, getting through the drills. A 2 is reluctant. Okay, I had to kind of correct the kid a few times to get going. A 1 is resistant. I told a kid, now he kind of mouthed off, and a 0, you didn't come to practice. So that's how our kids will grade it every day. And we did that last year, but I used our coaches to do it. I think I'm going to use our players now after we go through our team captain leadership thing. So that's exciting.
Do you have that written down somewhere where you could email it to me?
I do. I actually have the rubric and the Google spreadsheet. I can just send you as a copy.
Yeah, will you do that?
Yeah.
You got my email, right? Coach Joe Salas at Gmail.
Got it.
All right.
Got it.
So that elite high level stuff right there, man. That's truly impressive what you're doing in the off season and how zeroed in you are on culture and and saying this is so important. We're going to wait and talk about X and O's later. That's hard for a football coach to do, but obviously you see the power of it. All right. So number 4, this is funny talking to a young guy now. What do you know now that you wish you knew when you first got started?
Yeah, going to our first job, that was my first, football job. I was 2 hours away from home. I kind of didn't pick that one. I had to just take it. And thankfully, the year I got there, it was a mess. And the second year, it was a lot better. And alignment was a big deal. And I feel like the next job I took was to come back home, got married. So I really didn't choose that one. And then the next one, when I was a coordinator, was not good. And the alignment wasn't there it definitely wasn't there from a coaching staff, the guys that were on staff previous to me getting there. And it definitely wasn't there, I think, from administration, athletic department, football program, and so forth. And so there was just misalignment everywhere. Parents were upset about the previous coach leaving and then the next coach coming in. And I was just a coordinator, just kind of trying to figure it all out and kind of work with guys that didn't know. And so it just wasn't good, and it left a bad taste in everybody's mouth. Nobody had a good experience. We didn't necessarily have falling outs, but it was just not good. So I was out of there. And so I went, and I was a coordinator that year. And that's when I went to York to be a JV wide receiver coach. And so it was that bad. But I learned a lot doing that. So I think the biggest thing is taking the right job. And I know I mentioned that earlier, but taking the right job, whether you're a position coach, coordinator, or head coach. If you're a position coach, research if you're a really fiery, loyal position coach that's willing to learn, then you need any good program will be willing to have you if they have a spot. So that's what you need to research and understand who you're going to be coaching for, and then talk to that coach and say, hey man, how's the athletic department? Are they in alignment with what you're trying to do? And then that way you're a part of an organization that you can grow in and stay there for a while. And I was able to do that at York, where I was a JV wide receiver coach, and I knew that if I worked my tail off, then I would have an opportunity at some point to grow. And from JV wide receiver coach, JV offense coordinator, varsity wide receiver coach, varsity coordinator under Bobby Carroll. And I don't know if a lot of guys get that opportunity. I mean, you have so many good coordinators out there that they just take jobs in this, but I knew that I was in an organization that if I worked hard enough for Bobby and I was loyal to him, and I was skillful enough, then he would ultimately give me a chance at when the chance came. And so that's why I stayed. And I think that's what was a big deal. So I think taking the right job is important. If you're a coordinator, you definitely have to do it, because now, you're kind of more on the chopping block a little bit with that and the level of responsibility you have, and then certainly the head coach. So when I interviewed at Cannon, my biggest it's a 45-minute drive, not ideal. I was at York, place I love. Was there for 6 years. Got a good situation over there, teaching all that stuff, and to stick your neck out a little bit, you got to make sure it's the right job. And I learned that as a position coach and coordinator. And so when I went there, I wasn't sure if I'd ever take the job because I didn't know anything about it. But I think the interview process was big because you're there so long, you talk to so many people, and they all say the same thing: culture, 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 culture. And so it wasn't about you got to have 6 wins your first year, or you got to turn this thing around. We got to win state championships. And so with the level of talent that they've generally had, and the culture that was going on, I knew that I can come in and make an immediate impact with culture only. And so I wasn't worried about scheme as much, although I really try to keep up with that a good deal. That's a big part of what I do. But I knew that culture alone would immediately impact the experience that our kids were going to have, and now it's going to increase in numbers, and it already has. We got kids. I'm trying to get all the kids out of the hallways, and they're really excited about being a part of it, and I'm not even having to recruit them. It's what we've done. We did have some success. We won some really close games with a bunch of young players, and so that gives everybody a little hope that we can be good. And then the players are saying, "Dude, you need to come out here and play. It's fun. It's exciting. It's Coach Bolton's this and that," and the coaching staff has done a great job. They love the assistant coaches. That's a big part of it too. And so I think that's the biggest thing, just making sure that you have alignment. And so in my particular situation, we had a new AD coming in that I didn't know, and she was actually hired the same time I was. But the guy, her name's Kayla Rube, and the guy that was on the hiring committee for me, the head football coach, and the athletic director was Sean Powell, the strength coach. And so he's a huge culture guy. He's been a part of the Carolina Panthers, Penske Racing, and so he's been a part of successful organizations. And so when he's a part of that process, you have a good idea, like, you're in the right place because you're a culture guy. So I felt like my values were in alignment with Cannon's values. And so I was like, I got to take the job if they offer it to me. And so it's big. And so I think that's the biggest thing when, I guess in my young career.
All right. So here's the problem is that is a very unique situation. I don't know. And I've interviewed for thousands of jobs. It seems like, not really, but it seems like that. And I don't know if I don't know that I can remember one time that a place was talking about culture. Uh,
Mm.
I've had interviews where I started talking about culture, and they looked at me like I was crazy. So how do you get that out of them if they're not? It sounds like you came in and they're talking culture, and you're saying, "Oh, ha, I found it. This is a place that cared about culture."
Yeah, I mean,
What if they're not talking it?
right. So I interviewed at well, when the York job came open, I interviewed for that one, and I knew that was a long shot, no experience, but I've been there for a while. Um, I interviewed at one, two, two other schools, and could have taken one of them because the AD there was a big culture guy. Didn't really feel comfortable at the time taking it. And then the other school I interviewed finished second, and they were semi-culture. They wanted to win, and they've been used to winning, and so it depends, So just if you want to be a head coach, you may have to go in, I guess, and say, look, I'm going to have to change the culture of the athletic department, with what I'm doing, and that can happen, I'm sure. It just depends on the principal. It depends on the athletic director, and if you want to be a head coach, I mean, you're gonna have to probably deal with that. I know that other. I mean, I'm sure that you've dealt with that some in your career, obviously, and a lot of other careers. This is my first job, and I feel like I've just been extremely lucky, but also very strategic and sticking my neck out. And being at York and being a position coach or a coordinator at York's a really, really good job. And so I didn't necessarily feel like I had to get out of something to go in. And it was a really hard decision to leave. Yeah, I've been extremely blessed in my career to be at some good places and to be at some not so good places to kind of figure that out. But I'm in a good area too. Like I was able to commute to York, and I'm able to commute to Concord. I'm right here in Gastonia, so it's not not in a real remote area where there's only a few schools. Um, so yeah.
Probably a good lesson there is it's a lot easier to get a good job when you already got a good job. that might be
I'd say
that might
lucky,
be
man, just
pretty
lucky. But
powerful too.
I've been there where you had to go and be a position coach, and um, you're kind of at the whims of what the head coach wants, and taking another job means you got to leave the district. And I think I coached at 4 places in 4 years. so so that's so it obviously wasn't working out, and not really what I was all about. So, but yeah.
Well, man, you've done a phenomenal job. One of the best we've ever had on here. Question number 5. Can you give guys your contact information? Because I guarantee you they're going to be hitting you up on some of the different stuff you're doing. And then anything you got to want to promote, or just you got the final
Yeah,
word.
so I really appreciate you having me on. I love talking about this stuff. I feel like this is one of the things that you're talking about, the numbers of people that watch the scheme stuff versus the culture stuff, and it's telling. You can see that when you play opponents. I came in and interviewed as culture over strategy, scheme, and I feel like our scheme's dang good, but our culture's got to be better because at some point you're not going to be the best skilled team on the field, and your culture will be revealed. And I feel like that's I love what you're doing with this. And um, I will say I need to give a shout out to our strength coach Sean Powell. Dude's done a fantastic job. He's established a culture in that athletic department. Our basketball team, men's basketball team, just won their back-to-back state championship. Girls won it this year too, in the private school ball, and that's tough. Volleyball just played for a state title. I'm sorry, I think they played for a state title. Volleyball did, and we won the conference in football, and so there's a lot of alignment in our athletic department, and it's a lot to do with our athletic director, Katie LaRue. She came in. She's huge on culture. Me and her have awesome conversations about, hey, what are you doing with your, she's just so interested in that. She does everything that I've asked her to, have in terms of culture and all this stuff. So I'm in a really good place. I need to give those guys a shout out. Our school, Cannon School, from the head of school, Christopher Jones, to our upper school head, Deb Odie. Everybody feels like they're in alignment, and I just couldn't. I just feel like I'm in a great place right now, and a great place to experiment and do things without the fear of too much pressure. And I obviously thank the kids and the parents for being on board, man. That's the biggest thing. You got to get the parents on. The parents were wanting it, a guy to come in for that, and the players are really loving it. So just want to give everybody a shout out. And then you can reach me. You can reach me through Twitter at Coach_J Bolt Bolt. And then our football page, we put a lot of our culture stuff on there. At Warrior Way Football, or I'm sorry, at Warrior Way FB is our Twitter. So at Warrior Way FB. And then I can also give you my email address. It's pretty easy. jbolton at cannonschool.org. And so if you need anything, you're privy to all the stuff that I have. I've given stuff out before. People use it, people don't. But I don't really care. Heck, I didn't make any of this stuff up. These are just stuff I learned. So it's not my information anyway. But yeah. So if you need anything, let me know, and then I may have some questions for you guys too. So.
Man, you hit home run. Great job, buddy.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate you having me on.